Classification and division of students. Introduction. Effective education relies on many different factors, many of which depend entirely on the teacher, the institution, and the learning environment. However, no less critical are students' goals, motives in education, their predisposition to subjects, and the ability to study them. Classifying and dividing students into specific categories based on their learning motives will help identify each type's specific qualities. Thanks to such an analysis, it is possible to improve students' academic performance and their involvement in academic life, and arouse interest in certain subjects according to their goals. Classification. The students can be divided into three main categories. The first category strives to obtain a professional certificate, and the primary motive for their studies can be described as ensuring further employment. The second group aims to further education in undergraduate and graduate programs and is generally interested in science or teaching subjects in their specialties. The third type takes courses for personal enrichment, pursuing their own specific goals. Each of the three groups requires a specific approach. For example, students from the first group are much more critical of industrial practice, in which they can hone their skills before employment. In contrast, teaching practice is not as essential for them as for students of the second group. The third group needs to develop specific skills that need to be pointed out to the teaching staff right away to correct their work in a certain way possibly. The classification helps to define the modular structure correctly. It means that three distinct groups of students help understand the common motives of most people who enroll with similar goals. Thus, it helps each student improve his academic performance or involvement in the educational process and improve the practical work of the staff of the educational institution. According to the scientific literature, the development of education should take place on these two fronts, including both the staff of the institution and the students. It is worth noting that students come to study with similar goals most often. Since understanding such goals and taking into account many other cultural specificities, it will help to ensure the sustainable development of education. Naturally, there are many examples when students cannot be attributed to any of these groups, but these are rather outliers in statistics than the imperfection of the proposed model. For example, it happens that a student enters without having clear goals for his future life. He could act on the advice of his parents, go with friends for the company, or simply focus on an exciting specialty but not yet making a choice in favor of science or career. Consequently, such a classification almost entirely confirms the approach of some higher educational institutions, where in the first years, the student goes through a satisfying general program, but after that, he must choose a particular specialty for in-depth study of the subject. However, this classification ultimately requires not only adjustments to the work of specific structures in educational institutions. This work can take place by introducing various surveys to identify the strengths and weaknesses of this approach. Perhaps it is worth developing meetings and discussions among the management of the educational institution, but with the obligatory involvement of students and the opportunity for them to present their ideas. This inclusion in classroom life will increase control over student progress and add an element of competition or play for them, which is also extremely important in aspects of involvement. Conclusion. Consequently, classification and division into similar groups are critical for future education, providing many opportunities for improving current educational processes and understanding the students' motives. It gives a better understanding of the problem, allows to reconsider approaches to education, and requires effort and involvement on the part of students. Finally, a similar approach can be used to predict academic performance and the need for certain subjects for students of different categories.